Hi, Alex. Thank you for coming on. Happy to have you on. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Great. I'm cool also. Thank you. I'm happy to talk about Snappi and all the business behind it. And why don't you tell us what is Snappi actually? Is like an app building platform where you can create apps with a snap of a finger, right? Right? Isn't that what it is?
That's essentially it. Yes, exactly. It's a platform for developing mobile apps, essentially for all platforms, iOS devices, Android devices, tablets, smartphone-sized devices. Uh, there are a lot of different sort of platforms out there. A lot of folks trying to create an easier way to develop apps.
Yeah.
Snappi, we specifically focus on developing sophisticated apps that are more focused on enterprises that connect to a variety of data sources and that give people ability to really build apps without limitations, without sort of the typical templatization that you see in online services.
Right. Yeah, that was my next question. Why enterprise?
Because we see a much bigger business problem in the enterprise rather than consumers. While the whole industry started in the consumer space, the enterprise presents a much bigger challenge for companies for several reasons. One is there are so many more applications that enterprises need. You take a typical company, they make a one or two consumer apps. But
Yeah.
if you look at all of their internal IT systems, they have so many. And what pretty much every company wants to do is to develop a mobile front end in front of existing systems. It's sort of analogous to what happened when GUI became popular. Windows came out, and
Yeah.
enterprise decided, wow, they need to have Windows apps that front end existing systems. So the same thing is happening now with mobile. It's a much bigger opportunity, and enterprises especially are facing really big challenges. First of all, unlike Windows, it's not one platform, right? They have
Yeah.
Android platform, they have iOS platform to deal with. Windows phone may get successful at some point. BlackBerry, who knows? So there are a variety of different platforms, and to develop for each platform is very challenging. Second issue is enterprises are really strained from in terms of developers. They don't have a lot of mobile developers, and mobile developers are hard to find.
Yeah.
Very hard to
And very
find.
expensive.
Very expensive, right? So what Snappi allows enterprises to do is to deploy practically any programmer, even non-programmers. I mean, we have marketing people and project managers who build enterprise level apps with Snappi. And because you build apps visually, you don't have to learn another programming language. So the way I like to say it is, we really enable the masses. We really enable a lot of people in the enterprise to develop apps without having to do necessarily a lot of expensive outsourcing. It's one thing when you outsource one or two apps, but when you ask enterprises these days and they have 30 systems which
Yeah.
they want to mobilize, it becomes very expensive.
Right. So can you give an example of like what sort of apps can you develop? Like specific apps.
Uh, For practically, there's a wide variety of apps in wide variety of industries,
Some
right?
of them
From
like more interesting ones that you've seen.
everything from commerce apps, you know, uh, s- showing products, taking orders, doing fulfillment, to field service apps. They're
Right.
enabling people in the field to deliver service and to invoice customers faster and easier. To a lot of vertical apps in various industries right? Mobile is really revolutionizing, for example, transportation and logistics, right? Where you can, basically the truck drivers can take, have an app that takes pictures of inventory, get sign off quickly, click one button, invoicing happens, to apps in the, in the manufacturing side of things, to apps in the insurance business, that front end, existing systems, getting quotes out faster, to apps in the collision, service industries. I mean, the camera has really become much more than a photo. It really has become a scanner, if you will, a document
True.
scanner, right? And so just about every industry, is utilizing the GPS capability, the scanning capability, the QR codes. We have a lot of apps that have been built on system where people are leveraging QR code scanner and QR code coupons. So really a wide variety of apps that
Right.
people have built. Last count, I think we're updating it regularly on the website. We're over 20,000 apps have
Yeah,
been built with Snappi.
20,450, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, last time I checked, a couple hours ago. Right, which is impressive, really. And it's people from the enterprise actually going to your website and using your interface to build apps for their own use, right?
Right, it's exactly. Snappi is a cloud-based platform. So whether it's people from large enterprises or people from smaller enterprises, smaller companies,
Right.
are using that as well. I mean, it's really a variety of customers that we have.
Does that mean you don't have any consumers actually consumer focused apps being made?
We have companies make consumer-focused apps. They're making
Yeah.
apps for their consumers. We don't make games. That's not what
Right.
Snappi is for. And we have individuals that have built apps for all kinds of things. I mean, and the interesting thing is that it's not the system is easy to use because it's visual, because it's WYSIWYG, drag, drop, configure. I mean, it actually attracted all kinds of people that have never built any kind of software in the past. I mean, I'll give you one example. We have a customer who is a Lufthansa pilot.
Yeah.
Who, and this is his hobby, right? He builds apps in his spare time.
For clients.
For
himself.
I mean, they don't have an app to automate, something to do with crew scheduling. And so he took it upon himself to build an app, and now he and others at Lufthansa, other pilots and crews, using the app. So it's amazing what you find out there.
That's great, really. Yeah, talking about games, I meant to ask you, other than games, are there any specific apps that cannot be built actually with Snappi, or like some features that it's not intended for?
No, it's other than games, there are really no other sort of hard rules about it. We don't do augmented reality, so I mean maybe that's one category of apps.
Yeah.
But pretty much any business app that deals with data, right? Getting data, updating data, updating systems, taking advantage of all the hardware, the mobile sensors that's available. I mean, all of these things are open. And really kind of the key, so to differentiate ourselves from some of the other folks, for example, biz apps, right? That, so they've taken a very different approach. I mean, their approach is offer customers a few templates and let them basically fill in the content, right? So
Right.
you don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of the layout, in terms of really individualizing app. We've taken a very different approach, maybe slightly more difficult than kind of a templatized approach, but it has a lot more flexibility. I mean, when you go into Snappi, you're building you basically get a canvas, and it's WYSIWYG, right? WYSIWYG editor. What you see is you drag and drop, you build your user interface, you put the functionality visually, so you have 100% control, down to the pixel level, in terms of what your app is gonna looks like, and the flow of the app and so on.
Right. Yeah. Now I can understand, because I've tried to build apps with like a number of platforms, but many of them, and I'm not saying that that's bad or good, but many of them, like they look like kind of artificial. And I took a look at you have this gallery on Pinterest with the apps that have been developed with Snappi, and they look like real apps, really, like native apps.
They are native apps. They
are.
When you build on Canvas, and then you say, great, I want to preview now.
Right.
And you preview this immediately on any mobile device. What happens behind the scenes is, we generate native code for Android or iOS or HTML5, if that's how you want to proceed. But yeah, for us it doesn't matter, right? There's a lot of religious wars. HTML, hybrid, native. Which
I was
way
going to
go?
ask you, what do you think about that, actually?
You know what?
What's your opinion?
It really depends, like on a lot of things. It really depends on what kind of app you're building, but we've taken the approach of we can generate any app you want. It doesn't really matter. And in fact, I think it's the only sort of fail-safe approach, right? As you know, there's a lot of HTML hybrid apps that now are, people are discovering, well, there are performance problems, and there are, big public moves away from HTML. I mean, Facebook moved away,
Facebook,
and LinkedIn said, no, we're going to go native. So if you're an IT manager, you start building this app. If you've taken an HTML, JavaScript, kind of a hybrid approach with a phone gap, it may not work. You may run into performance problems. You may, you definitely don't have the same security options. You cannot build disconnected apps, not really, right? If you need a local database, you really need to have native functionality. So, we've taken the approach of, you build once, and we take care of all the platform specifics, And if you go down the HTML5 hybrid approach, and it's not, it doesn't work, no problem. I mean, you could just click off which platforms you want, and Snappi does the job. You're not going to back yourself into an architectural approach and then discover, oops, it doesn't work.
Right. Well, from your observations, what are users' preference in terms of hybrid and HTML within Snappi?
Well, I would say users gravitate within Snappi, particularly users gravitate towards native, because it's the same amount of effort, right? You build it visually. You get native apps, you get HTML5 hybrid apps. So if it's the same effort, why not go with native? I mean, native is what people want, right? Native apps is what people don't want, is the time, complexity, cost necessary to build them. But Snappi really neutralizes all of that. It's the same effort to build native app as it is a hybrid HTML5 app.
Yeah, right. Well, in terms of the process, what happens after the app is built? Who takes care of distribution and all that, and uploading to the App Store or Google Play?
Part of the Snappi platform is we've automated submittal and distribution of apps. So you literally click off where you want your app to be submitted, Google Play, Apple App Store, and fill in a little bit of information, and Snappi platform takes care of the rest. It auto-submits basically to various app stores. If your app is for the internal use, it would be basically private app
in
store,
the cloud
target,
or
right? In the cloud, that doesn't matter.
with
I mean,
you,
it's
right?
yeah, exactly. It's and also the distribution aspect of it. You know, we built the protocol for updating these apps into the platform. So, especially with mobile apps, I mean, people really just learning what they really want, and the changes are just rampant, right? I mean, you know, you start going to changing it even before it's released publicly. So we have the ability to update apps on thousands of devices with basically a click of a button. It doesn't matter, um, how many devices your app is already. You just say, okay, I want to publish. You click a publish button. All the users of the app get a notification that a newer version is available, and you can, and they can choose to update.
Right. So you don't have any limitations in terms of downloads or like notifications or anything?
No. No. We specifically want to make sure that people have the ability to update apps at their will.
Right. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how you started it all? And there's obviously many platforms like you, but you took a slightly different approach. What was the logic you kind of adopted there?
Right. So we started the company 3.5 years ago, and it was becoming obvious that mobile is not going to be a niche market. That that it's really the next platform, the next front end, if you will, the next kind of a natural step in evolution, and
Yeah.
that. Maybe it wasn't that obvious 3.5 years ago, but I mean, it looked like it was going that way. And so, what I wanted to do is, I also, I spent 25 plus years in IT and enterprise systems, and clearly every time a new platform comes out, it's a major disruption to enterprises in terms of being able to adopt it, being able to build quickly, build apps. I mean, the application backlog is in most companies is huge as it is now with mobile. It's really growing out of proportion, right? And sort of,
Sure.
again, I draw the parallel to Windows. I've seen what happened in the 90s when Windows came out, and everybody wanted to build Windows apps, but enterprises didn't have Windows programmers. They had mostly COBOL programmers, right?
Right.
That were needed to find, enterprises needed to find some ways to enable these people to build Windows apps. And back in those days, if you remember, there were tools like Power Builder that became very popular,
Not really.
it's ended up they grew tremendously, and it was $1 billion acquisition in '96 by Sybase. So I saw the same parallel basically that would happen now with enterprises wanting to build mobile front ends like they wanted to build Windows front ends, and the same skill issues, people issues, right? And so that's how I basically conceived of this thing, is I figured if you can enable people to visually build apps, then that really takes away a lot of the limitations,
Right.
for skills and time and so on.
True. Yeah, right. Can you talk like more generally about the enterprise app segment? It seems like, as you said, it all started with consumer apps and games, but now it seems like more and more people and investors and VCs and everything are going crazy about enterprise. And where do you see it going? And what do you see that is yet to be developed there?
Yeah, I think we're in the early stages, very early stages. So the consumer mobile app market is fairly mature,
Yeah.
but the enterprise market is in the very early stage. We're in that inflection point where most companies have built one or two apps, and now this year they have plans to build, 10, 15 apps, and so we're just at that kind of massive inflation point. I think the enterprise market will outgrow consumer market by leaps and bounds over the next several years. I think that as more enterprises develop mobile apps, and it's sort of the enterprises have no choice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
consumers have these mobile devices, employees have these mobile devices in their hands, and they're demanding access to data, to the enterprise systems. It's it's a little bit like the barbarians knocking on the walls of Rome.
Yeah.
The enterprises don't have a choice, right? For consumers, for employees, for partners, they need to build mobile apps, and there are clearly lots of enterprise systems. So I think what you're going to see over the next couple of years is a massive uptick in enterprise app development, and with really sophisticated apps, much more sophisticated than many of the consumer apps that have been built up to now, because you need to connect to legacy systems. You need to have the ability to scale into hundreds of thousands, possibly into millions, right? You have connectivity options to all kinds of systems, SQL Server, Oracle, SAP. I mean, architecturally it's much more challenging, more complex.
Right. Yeah, actually, you answered my next questions. In what way enterprise apps are different from consumer apps? They're like more resource demanding, and they are more complex to
Yeah,
build.
they're more resource demanding, more complex. They require a lot more data connectivity, right? There's no standalone app. I mean,
Yeah.
they would be totally useless in the enterprise, right? So
Right.
it's on many levels, many different users, many different use cases that the apps need to support. But I think that the benefit is, the same benefits that consumers gotten from the apps. I think it's probably the single most uh, groundbreaking technology that enterprises can utilize to really improve their business, right?
Yeah.
You know, cloud, for example. Yeah, okay, that will result in savings in IT, and but when enterprises create apps that enable new revenue streams, that enable new customers to come to
Yeah.
right to it's just the things that you can do that haven't been done before that really have significant impact on business. I think are only possible with mobile.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's an amazing and really entirely new channel, to reach audience and to offer really new services that you haven't been able to offer so far. I was going to ask you, are there, and I think I asked you this question, are there any particular kind of apps that you see really trending within Snappi? Can you give an example?
But really trending in sort
Uh,
of popularity.
yes, yeah, yeah. That people really want to build, like demand, for.
Sure. Sure, a couple of trends that I see. Clearly apps that enable people working in the field, right? In
Yeah,
terms of data collection, especially sensory data collection, right? Photos, etc.
right.
Really huge impact.
As you
Uh,
said, drivers and everything. Yeah,
Drivers, I mean, really, service technicians, pretty much anybody, being able to collect data out there, submit it, get response very quickly. I think that's a very, very popular. I mean, the whole notion with electronic forms. I mean, I think we finally are at a point where these paper forms are going to start getting seriously reduced, or and hopefully sometime in the future eliminated, right? So I mean, anything that you had a paper form for in the past, I mean, really can be done right with apps. I mean, we see this kind of form, application replacement, physical application, paper replacement, really trending, out there. Commerce, clearly, right? I mean, it's another channel. So, especially on iPads, seeing, it's a great way to, flip through a catalog. I think iPads are seriously having
true, especially for enterprise.
The whole catalog thing. I mean, instead of printing thousands of copies, these thick catalogs where everything can be, basically with very high quality, high resolution done electronically. I think it's tremendous. Commerce, front-ending corporate systems, right? I mean, it's, really anything that was done before that, required, well, I mean, a simple insurance example, as simple as, getting quotes. You look at a Geico app, and now that you can go, fill in a couple of pieces of data, and out comes a custom quote. It doesn't matter where you are. Mobile banking clearly is trending big time, right? I mean, just the convenience of a mobile device in your hand, 8 hours a day versus what a typical person spends an hour on the computer. So, right, it's those are the areas that I see trending the most.
Right, pretty exciting, really. Well, and my last question: your advice for people who want to build a great app? What are the key factors to focus on, especially for non-techies?
Sure, I think the most important thing is to keep it simple, right? Keep in mind, especially if you're building an app for a smartphone size device, right? It's a much smaller screen footprint. It's not, it should not be your Windows app, that does 30 things. My advice is make your apps purposeful, have it do one or two things and do it well, and don't deviate from that. It's better to have lots of different apps rather than and do a couple of things well than try to cram too much functionality into apps, which people naturally, I see software engineers naturally do when they come from the Windows world. They want to cram everything into this little device, and that's not the approach.
Yeah, it's tempting, really. Well, that's great advice, Alex. Thank you for this interview and everything. It's very exciting, and we'll be following your work and your project. Thank you very much.
Thanks for doing this.